Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic many of you have probably been thinking about, maybe whispering about, how the internet, which, once felt like this bastion for a certain progressive counterculture, seems to have shifted. Pretty dramatically, actually.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating observation and sometimes a challenging one.
Definitely. So our deep dive today kicks off with a viral video. It was by a creator called Hazel,
Hmm.
and it really sparked a huge conversation online.
Hmm.
And that chat then led to these two really insightful, deep essays that, well, they pick apart her observations, add more layers, more context.
Right. And our job today really is to unpack what these sources are saying. We want to get into the cultural, the ideological, maybe the strategic reasons they see behind this shift in, let's say, online influence.
And what it means for how ideas actually spread now, right?
Right.
How movements grow in this digital world we're all in.
Exactly. It's about understanding not just what might have happened according to these sources, but kind of why it matters for, navigating things today.
Okay, so let's start with that core idea that the internet, way back when, was the place for the weirdos, punks, artists, the radically curious.
The fringe finding its home, its people.
And the sources get specific. They're not just talking about a general vibe. They say things like meme fluency, shit posting.
That Tumblr wit.
Right, Vine irony, Reddit's kind of insurgent feel, early Twitter even. They argue all this stuff was fundamentally left-coded.
And by left-coded, they mean it had this kind of inherent progressive slant or aesthetic, like characterized by wit, maybe rebellion, a shared subculture feeling.
Exactly. The sources paint this picture where the internet just felt like it belonged to progressives, feminists, socialists, Bernie bros, techno-revolutionaries. It was, their turf.
And one of the strongest points these sources make is that the left didn't just, hang out there. They argue the left actually invented that.
Invented the memes, the language.
The whole rhythm of the place, it really shaped it. It makes you think, doesn't it? Thinking back to your own early internet days, does that resonate? Did it feel like that kind of counterculture space?
It's a good question to ask yourself as you
Yeah.
listen, yeah. So if that was the weird kid era, then what? Because the sources argue things changed dramatically.
This is where that pivotal argument comes in. The culture, once so, I don't know, vibrant, it slowly, then all at once got bureaucratic, then brittle, then boring.
Oof, bureaucratic, brittle, boring. That's quite a trajectory.
Yeah, and they list these really specific, almost stifling shifts, like jokes suddenly needing disclaimers.
Memes coming with instruction manuals.
Right. And the revolution came with onboarding paperwork. It sounds exhausting. And they mentioned pronoun bios replacing avatars, more language policing, this whole trigger warning economy.
And those multi-slide infographics explaining micro-traumas.
Exactly. The sources basically describe it as a total fun killer. Like the internet suddenly got super serious, maybe a bit uptight.
Which brings us right to that core idea from Hazel, the one the essays really dig into. The left is morality pilled, and it's why we lost the internet.
And the sources are careful to explain it's not just about having morals, it's framed as something else, anxiety dressed as ethics.
Anxiety dressed as ethics.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice, according to them?
Well, they describe it as this culture where every interaction has to be pristine. Every single take needs to be trauma-informed. It sounds like this constant, almost paralyzing pressure to never, ever say or do the wrong thing.
Okay, and the consequence of that, how did that play out?
The sources argue that, well, most people don't even see that as moral. They see it differently, as
Right.
weird, uptight, controlling, no fun, no joy. That's the language used. It comes across, they suggest, like a neurotic cult, or maybe grad school managers with ring lights and shadow bans. Alienating, basically.
Not inviting. That's a
Yeah.
really striking image.
Yeah.
So this focus on purity, this anxiety, it pushed people away.
That's the argument. The sources say the left stopped letting people be human. Instead of being relatable, they started talking like nerds, making folks feel they had to pass a quiz to join the conversation.
Which leads to exclusion, not explanation. You wall people off instead of bringing them in.
Precisely. And this, the sources suggest, well, it created an opening, a vacuum.
So while the left became, what do they call it? The school marm?
Yeah, the strict lecturing figure. While that was happening, the right became the court jester. Agile, funny, entertaining, they took a very different path.
How so? What do they do differently?
Well, the accounts say the right cracked the meme code. Simple as that. They didn't overthink, they just laughed.
Okay.
The sources use this great phrase. They took leftovers from our culture engine, added testosterone and irony, and built a vibe empire.
Wow. A vibe empire. Can you give examples of what they mean?
Sure, the sources mention things like the term based, right? Which was this niche online thing for something authentic becoming associated with someone like Theo Von.
Okay, I see.
Or the idea that the algorithm got red-pilled, meaning content feeds started leaning more right. Even things like soy jacks, those meme characters kind of defecting, being used heavily by right-leaning groups. It's all about repurposing and resonance.
So it sounds like the core argument is that the right focused on vibe and humor, even if it wasn't always, say, ideologically pure and consistent.
Exactly. That's a key insight from these sources. The right realized you don't need to be right if you're funny. A good meme, apparently, hits harder than a trauma-informed slideshow.
Even if it's contradictory or incoherent.
Yeah, the sources say they're contradictory, hypocritical, incoherent, but they vibe. And here's the kicker. When people are in pain, vibe coherence every time. Connection beats perfection.
That's powerful. And it connects to strategy, too, right? The funding differences.
Oh, absolutely. A stark contrast. The sources point out right-wing billionaires funding actual infrastructure, podcasts, YouTube empires, TikTok psyops, meme channels, a whole ecosystem.
Well, the left, according to these sources, was focused on
Things like hashtags, voting drives, Instagram slideshows with fonts from Duolingo, and maybe more pointedly, public apologies for attending the wrong brunch.
right. And those coconut-themed parties for online influencers where people felt like baddies, kind of insular, maybe?
That seems to be the implication. And that Media Matters report cited as pretty stark. 9 out of the top 10 online shows had right-leaning politics. The right just captured the views, leading to 2024 being dubbed the podcast election. The strategies were worlds apart.
Which kind of leads into the internal stuff, right? The internal dynamics described in the sources.
Yeah, another really interesting contrast. They describe the populist right having this rule. No enemies to the right.
Meaning?
Meaning they welcome pretty much everyone. A white nationalist next to a gym bro, a crypto-libertarian, a boomer Catholic, they're all kind of in the tent together, nodding along.
Okay, versus the left.
Which, the sources suggest, tends to audit each other like HR managers with bloodlust, always building purity tests.
Ouch. Are there specific examples given?
Yeah, and they're quite something. People apparently getting canceled for stuff said way back in 2013. Or attacked for mispronouncing a niche identity, even getting ostracized for associating with the wrong live stream.
Wow.
There's even that example of a Palestine fundraiser almost getting shut down because, while white people organized it, the focus shifted from the cause to the identity of the organizers.
That really highlights the purity test idea. And then there's this spiritual dimension the sources bring up. How does that fit in? Politics as something more.
It's this idea that the conflict feels bigger than politics for those involved. It's perceived as almost existential.
How so? Existential.
Well, each side sees the other as a fundamental threat. The sources say the right views the left as anti-God, anti-family, anti-tradition, just anti-everything tradition.
And the left sees the right as
Theocratic fascists.
Yeah.
So, the stakes feel incredibly high on both sides. The sources say, no one's debating anymore, we're exercising.
exercising. Wow.
Yeah. And the left's focus on safety, according to these sources, gets heard by the right as an attempt to castrate the culture. It's seen as filling a God-shaped hole, that sense of deeper meaning with just guidelines, guilt, and Google Docs.
Okay, so that's a pretty bleak picture of the division.
Yeah,
But the sources don't just leave it there, right? They talk about a way forward.
they do. They don't just diagnose, they propose solutions. The main one being, don't try to rejoin the old tents. Instead, pitch a bigger tent.
A bigger tent. What does that look like, according to them? What are the features of this post-left populism they describe?
It's quite a list, actually. Things like embracing forgiveness, welcoming sinners, dropping the moral jargon, and just saying the truth without disclaimers.
So less policing, more openness.
Seems like it. And reclaiming a more grounded, relatable vibe. Someone who touches grass, engages with the real world. Someone who lifts heavy things, eats steak.
Implying a rejection of certain kinds of purity tests, maybe lifestyle ones?
Exactly. And crucially, someone who makes memes. It's also about focusing on actual material policies, things people can easily grasp that affect their lives.
Like UBI, Medicare for all.
Yeah, family support, worker ownership, and excess profits tax. Concrete stuff. And the overall goal, Bring back joy, swagger, weirdness, and mystery. Stop the constant apologizing and start inviting people in. Start building.
It sounds like a call for more authenticity and less performance. And the advice for individuals is interesting too. Less online arguing.
Yeah, pretty direct advice. Instead of endless online debates, do cool stuff as yourself and as someone who holds your values, and then just be a good role model.
Lead by example, basically. Let your real-life actions and community building do the talking.
Right, and part of that is creating fun real-life events that aren't just political rallies, spaces where people can just chill outside of their online lefty bubble.
And where the vibe is welcoming, even if people show up with, quote, questionable views or vibes.
Exactly. Be genuinely chill and welcoming. They mention Common Horizons in Canada as an example, focusing on policy, like an excess profits tax, but also just hosting fun social events, building community beyond the purely ideological.
So the ultimate call seems to be,
Yeah,
what, get cooler.
pretty much. Get cooler. See more of that swalletariat stuff, that blend of physical culture and working class appeal. Embrace more punks and freaks and weirdos, people who genuinely don't care what others think.
A call for more authenticity, more edge, maybe less concerned with fitting a perfect mold.
That's definitely the vibe, yeah. Broaden the appeal by being more human, more welcoming of imperfection.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've taken this deep dive, looking at these sources that argue the left's perceived loss of internet culture isn't just, external factors. It's also about an internal shift.
Right, a shift towards, as they describe it, moralizing, exclusion, maybe losing some of that relatable joy and humor.
While others, meanwhile, capitalize on different things, authenticity, humor, vibe, a broader appeal.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it?
Yeah, what's that?
Well, what would it really mean to build communities online and offline that actually prioritize genuine connection and humor? And maybe critically, a willingness to forgive instead of demanding purity and ideological rigidity.
What kind of tent are you looking for? And maybe what role could you play in actually pitching it? Something to think about.